When I first met David, his ambitious dreams seemed to light up every room he entered. As a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company, he carried himself with the confidence of someone destined for greatness. I remember our first meeting at a local coffee shop near Silver Oak Elder Care Facility, where I worked as a nurse. He was pitching his latest startup idea to a potential investor at the next table, and his passion was impossible to ignore. "The future of healthcare technology is about to change," he declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We're talking about revolutionizing how patients and caregivers connect." His enthusiasm was infectious, drawing curious glances from other patrons. When the investor left, David caught me watching and flashed a winning smile. Sorry if I was too loud. I tend to get carried away when I'm excited about something. I couldn't help but smile back. After spending my days caring for elderly patients, his vibrant energy was refreshing. "I work in healthcare, actually," I found myself saying. "Your ideas sound interesting." That simple exchange led to hours of conversation. David had this way of making his dreams seem tangible, almost within reach. He spoke about disrupting the tech industry, creating innovative solutions that would change lives. His eyes sparkled with determination as he described his vision of becoming his own boss, breaking free from the constraints of traditional employment. "I've always been different," he explained, gesturing with his coffee cup. "Every company I've worked for, they all want to put me in a box. Follow their rules, stick to their outdated methods. But that's not who I am, Marie. I see possibilities they can't even imagine." Looking back now, I should have recognized the warning signs hidden beneath his charismatic exterior. While his drive and ambition were genuine, there was a pattern of instability that would become all too familiar. He'd land promising positions at various tech companies, a database architect here, a senior developer there. But within months, the same story would repeat itself. Creative differences, he'd say, frustration evident in his voice when he'd come home after another confrontation with management. They hired me for my innovative thinking, but the moment I try to implement real changes, they resist. It's like they're allergic to progress. In those early days, his constant job changes didn't raise the red flags they should have. Working at Silver Oak had taught me about compassion, about seeing the best in people even when they struggled. I watched him bounce from one position to another, always convinced his next big break was just around the corner. "This time, it's different," became his mantra with each new opportunity. "This company actually values forward thinking. They understand what I'm trying to achieve." But it never was different. Within weeks or months, the pattern would repeat. A disagreement with superiors, a rejected proposal, or simply his growing restlessness would lead to another resignation. Each time, he'd frame it as a necessary step on his path to success. "Sometimes you have to take risks to achieve something greater," he'd tell me whenever I expressed concern about his frequent job changes. "Look at all the successful entrepreneurs. None of them played it safe. They dared to break the mold." His entrepreneurial spirit was admirable in theory, but it came with a cost, one that would become increasingly apparent as our relationship deepened. As a nurse who dealt with the practical realities of life and death daily, I should have been more cautious. But I was younger then, still idealistic despite my profession. The compassion that made me a good nurse also made me vulnerable to his grand visions and justifications. Every day at work, I helped elderly patients face their regrets and unfinished business. Perhaps that's why I was so drawn to David's refusal to live a life of compromise. His dreams seemed like an antidote to the quiet desperation I sometimes witnessed in my patients' final days. How naive I was to mistake his chronic instability for passionate determination. How blind I was to believe that his pattern of behavior would somehow change once we built a life together. But then again, isn't that what hope does to us? makes us believe in possibilities despite all evidence to the contrary. Early relationship days. When David and I moved in together, everything appeared picture perfect on the surface. He had secured a position as a senior software developer at a promising AI startup, and our financial life seemed stable. He never hesitated to cover his share of the expenses, and he took pride in treating me to nice dinners and weekend getaways. "You spend all day taking care of others," he would say, surprising me with reservations at upscale restaurants. "Let me take care of you for once. You deserve it after the emotional toll your job takes." His thoughtfulness touched me deeply. After spending my shifts at Silver Oak dealing with the complexities of elder care, the physical demands, the emotional labor, the delicate family dynamics, it felt wonderful to be on the receiving end of such attention and care. "I don't know how you do it," he would often say, massaging my shoulders after a particularly challenging shift. "Dealing with end-of-life care, families in crisis. You're amazing, Marie." Our relationship felt balanced, equal. We spent weekends exploring the city, talking about our future, and building what I thought was a solid foundation. David would share his latest tech ideas, and I would tell him stories about my patients, the wisdom they shared, the lives they'd lived, the regrets they carried. "That's why I can't settle for a normal life," he'd say after hearing these stories. "I don't want to look back at 80 and wonder, what if? I want to build something meaningful." I admired his determination to leave a mark on the world. After all, my work had taught me how precious and fleeting life could be. Watching my elderly patients reflect on their lives had given me a unique perspective on the importance of chasing dreams. The unexpected discovery. Everything shifted after we had Tyler. Our son brought immense joy to our lives, but he also brought new responsibilities and pressures that tested our relationship in ways I hadn't anticipated. The truth came to light one afternoon while I was organizing our home office, a task I'd been putting off during my busy shifts at the facility. I was filing away documents, surrounded by papers and folders, when I came across David's annual bank statement. At first, I almost set it aside, but something caught my eye. Regular monthly payments to an unknown account, all for the same amount, going back years. When I confronted David about it, his initial reaction sent a chill down my spine. His face contorted with anger, reminiscent of family members I'd seen at work when caught in a lie. "Why are you snooping through my private papers?" he demanded, snatching the statement from my hands. "Don't you trust me at all?" Years of dealing with difficult situations at the care facility had taught me to remain calm in the face of aggression. I stood my ground, keeping my voice steady and professional, the same tone I used when delivering difficult news to patients' families. "I wasn't snooping, David. I was organizing our files, something we both agreed needed to be done. But now that I've seen these payments, I need to understand what they're for." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as different emotions played across his face: anger, fear, resignation. Finally, he sank into his chair, looking suddenly older, more vulnerable. "I have a daughter," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Her name is Emma. She's from my relationship with Jennifer, my high school girlfriend." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. As someone who had witnessed countless family dramas unfold in the care facility, I thought I had seen it all. But this was different. This was personal. "I've been sending child support payments," he continued, words tumbling out now. "But I've never really been part of her life. I was too young, too scared. Jennifer and I were just kids ourselves." I stood there, trying to process this information while maintaining my professional composure, a skill honed through years of nursing. But inside, my mind was racing. Here I was, dedicated to caring for others, believing in the importance of family connections, while my husband had abandoned his own child. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice trembling despite my efforts to stay calm. All this time, we've been together for years, David. We have a son. I was terrified of losing you, he replied, his eyes pleading. Every time I thought about telling you, I imagined you walking away. I couldn't risk that. You and Tyler, you're everything to me. The aftermath. The days following David's revelation were a blur of emotions and sleepless nights. At work, I threw myself into caring for my elderly patients, finding some solace in the familiar routines of medication rounds and care plans. But my mind kept returning to the reality of my situation. My experience with family dynamics at Silver Oak had shown me how complex relationships could be. I'd watched countless families navigate difficult truths, witnessed last-minute reconciliations, and seen too many patients pass away with unresolved regrets. These experiences weighed heavily on my decision. Family relationships are complicated, Sarah, my fellow nurse at Silver Oak, told me during our lunch break. But secrets like this, they tend to surface eventually. At least now you can make an informed decision. After much soul-searching and several tearful nights, I made the difficult choice to stay. Not just for Tyler's sake, though he was a major factor, but because my work had taught me the value of second chances. I'd seen too many elderly patients in their final days, regretting the relationships they'd let slip away. One evening, after putting Tyler to bed, I confronted David with my decision. We sat in our kitchen, the same space where we'd shared so many happy moments, now feeling somehow smaller and more confined. I'm staying, I said firmly, using the same tone I employed when dealing with difficult family situations at work. But things need to change. You need to be part of Emma's life. David looked stunned, clearly having expected a different outcome. You want me to reach out to Emma? If Jennifer agrees, you should see Emma at least monthly, I continued. I've spent too many years watching people regret the time they lost with their children. I won't let you become one of them. I laid out my conditions clearly, drawing on my professional experience of handling family interventions. You'll need to be honest with me from now on about everything. And while I support you building a relationship with Emma, I'm going to keep my distance. This needs to be your journey. The relief on David's face was painful to watch. I don't deserve you, he whispered. This isn't about deserving, I replied, thinking of all the family reconciliations I'd witnessed at work. It's about doing what's right. For a while, things seemed to stabilize. David began making tentative efforts to connect with Emma, though I kept my distance, focusing on Tyler and my work at the facility. I never imagined how dramatically our lives would change when Jennifer passed away unexpectedly. The sudden change. I was in the middle of my shift at Silver Oak, helping an elderly patient with their physical therapy, when David called. His voice was urgent, almost frantic. Jennifer's dead, he blurted out. Car accident. Emma has nowhere to go. Before I could process this information, before we could have any meaningful discussion about what this meant for our family, David made a unilateral decision that would upend our lives. He brought Emma home, presenting it as a fait accompli. I came home from my shift to find Emma's bags in our living room, and David wearing an expression that was both defensive and pleading. She has nowhere else to go, Marie, he announced, as if that explained everything. This is what God intended. Remember how he talked about wanting another child? I stood there in my scrubs, still carrying the emotional weight of my day at work, trying to process this massive change to our family dynamic. As a nurse, I was trained to handle unexpected situations, to remain calm in a crisis. But this wasn't a medical emergency. This was our life being completely reorganized without my input. The growing tension. The tension in our house became suffocating. As much as my nursing experience had taught me to handle difficult situations with patience, this was pushing me to my limits. Conversations became strained, filled with unspoken resentments. The peaceful home we'd built was crumbling around us. One particularly difficult evening, after a double shift at Silver Oak where I dealt with 3 family emergencies, I reached my breaking point. I packed essential bags for Tyler and myself, my hands shaking as I folded his favorite pajamas. "We're going to stay with Aunt Sarah for a while," I explained to Tyler as gently as I could, using the same soothing voice I used with anxious patients. "Just until things settle down at home." Sarah, my fellow nurse and closest friend, welcomed us without hesitation. Her small but cozy apartment became our sanctuary. As we sat in her kitchen that first night, both still in our scrubs from work, she listened to everything. "Sometimes the kindest thing we can do, for ourselves and others, is to step back," she said, pouring me another cup of tea. "Just like we tell our patients' families when they're overwhelmed." But even at Sarah's, I couldn't escape the pull of family obligations. Tyler kept asking for his dad, his innocent questions breaking my heart. "When can we go home?" "I miss Daddy." "Is Emma going to be there forever?" David's messages were constant, each one more desperate than the last. "Please come home. We can work this out. Tyler needs both his parents. I'll make sure Emma understands her place. We're supposed to be a family." After a few days, remembering all the family reconciliations I'd witnessed at Silver Oak, the healing that could happen when people truly committed to change, I decided to return home. David met us at the door, relief evident on his face. The uneasy reconciliation. "Things will be different," David promised earnestly. "Emma will be my responsibility entirely. You won't have to worry about anything." But reality proved far different from his promises. Living with Emma was like walking through an emotional minefield. Her resentment toward me was palpable, manifesting in 1,000 small ways throughout our days. She would deliberately ignore my presence in shared spaces, turn up her music when I was trying to help Tyler with homework, and make cutting remarks just loud enough for me to hear. "At least some people get to keep their real moms," or "must be nice to be the favorite child." As someone who spent my days providing emotional support to elderly patients and their often difficult family members, I tried to understand her pain. The loss of her mother was still fresh, and she was struggling to find her place in our family. But her constant hostility was draining, especially after long shifts dealing with the emotional demands at the facility. I would come home exhausted from a 12-hour shift after holding the hand of a dying patient or consoling grieving family members, only to face Emma's cold shoulder and David's willful blindness to the tension. The inheritance. 2 years into this strained arrangement, my grandmother Elizabeth passed away. This loss hit me particularly hard. She wasn't just my grandmother. She had raised me after my parents' accident when I was young. She was the one who had inspired me to become a nurse, showing me the importance of caring for others while maintaining healthy boundaries. "You have your grandmother's strength," Sarah told me at the funeral. "And her wisdom, too. She'd be proud of how you've handled everything." The inheritance Elizabeth left me was substantial, approximately $2 million. It was enough to secure Tyler's future education and provide a comfortable life for us. But the moment David learned about the money, I noticed subtle shifts in his behavior. His questions became more frequent, more calculating. "We should think about using some of that money for a tech startup," he'd suggest casually over dinner. "Or maybe invest in Emma's future too. After all, family takes care of family, right?" I remembered my grandmother's words about setting clear boundaries and protecting what's yours. At work, I'd seen too many elderly patients struggling with family members who felt entitled to their savings. I kept my responses firm but kind, just as I did with demanding families at the facility. "The money is for Tyler's education and our retirement," I would say. That's what my grandmother intended. The job loss, Last year, everything deteriorated further when David lost his position as a senior developer. The incident occurred after a heated argument with a coworker over his latest revolutionary app idea. Instead of controlling his temper, David had resorted to physical violence. He just wouldn't listen to reason. David tried to explain while I examined his bruised knuckles with my nurse's eye. Some people can't handle being shown a better way. But instead of immediately looking for new opportunities in tech, David spent his days at home, supposedly developing his personal brand and strategizing his next move. I would leave for my shifts at Silver Oak at dawn and return 12 hours later to find him in exactly the same spot on the couch, surrounded by empty coffee cups and grandiose plans. The corporate world just doesn't understand true innovation, became his daily mantra. I need time to develop my ideas properly. Besides, we have your inheritance as a safety net. Those words made my stomach churn. Throughout my nursing career, I'd witnessed similar situations. Family members living off their elderly relatives' savings, always with excuses, always with promises of future success. Now I was living my own version of that story. Months passed, and David showed no real interest in job hunting. He knew my inheritance could cover our expenses, and he took full advantage of that fact. While I spent my days changing bedpans, administering medications, and providing end-of-life care, he was brainstorming and networking, which seemed to mainly consist of browsing social media and watching tech videos online. The pregnancy announcement. The situation reached a breaking point when Emma announced her pregnancy. Having dealt with numerous teen pregnancies during my hospital rotations, my medical instincts immediately went into overdrive. I could already envision the additional responsibilities that would inevitably fall on my shoulders. "You're going to be a grandmother," David announced excitedly one evening, as if this was wonderful news. "This is a blessing. Our family is growing." I sat at our kitchen table, still in my scrubs from a particularly difficult shift where I'd helped a family say goodbye to their grandmother, and felt the weight of this new reality crushing down on me. The thought of Emma and her boyfriend treating me as a built-in babysitter while they lived their lives sent waves of anxiety through my body. I scheduled a serious conversation with David in my home office the next day, approaching it with the same professional demeanor I used for difficult family meetings at Silver Oak. "If Emma decides to keep the baby, she needs to find her own place," I stated firmly, sitting behind my desk. "I'll help with financial support if needed, but I cannot and will not take on raising another child. I'm already working overtime at the facility, and you haven't contributed anything in months." David's quick agreement should have raised red flags. After 15 years in healthcare, I'd seen that same easy acquiescence from family members who had no intention of following through. The devastating discovery. The truth emerged in the most modern way possible. I was using David's laptop to check his promised job applications when a notification popped up, a live stream from Emma's social media account. What I witnessed made my blood run cold. There was Emma, sitting in her favorite coffee shop, laughing with her friends on camera. The stream had already been going for 20 minutes, and she was in the middle of explaining their brilliant plan. "So get this," she was saying, her face animated with mischief. "The best part is that my gullible nurse stepmom totally bought it. Dad and I have been planning this for weeks. We figured with her inheritance, we could squeeze out enough for me to start my influencer career properly." The comments section was filling with laughing emojis as she continued to detail their scheme. "Dad's really good at playing the supportive father when he needs to be. He's got her wrapped around his finger with all this family-first stuff." My hands shook as I used my phone to record the stream, my medical training kicking in as I documented everything, just as I would for a patient's file. 15 years of handling difficult situations had taught me the importance of keeping evidence. The casual cruelty of their conversation the way they laughed about manipulating me. It was all there in high definition. Emma even demonstrated how she planned to fake her pregnancy symptoms, while her friends offered suggestions for making it more convincing. The escape. I executed my escape with the same methodical precision I used when handling crisis situations at work. While David was taking his morning shower, a routine I knew would give me exactly 15 minutes, I gathered our essential documents: birth certificates, social security cards, bank statements, and my nursing licenses. Everything went into my emergency medical bag, along with the recorded evidence from Emma's live stream. "Tyler, honey," I whispered, gently waking my son. "Remember how we practiced packing your special adventure bag? It's time to use it." My heart broke watching him carefully pack his favorite stuffed lion and homework folder, just as we'd rehearsed. Working in elder care had taught me that sometimes the kindest departures are the quietest ones. Sarah's spare room was ready for us. She'd kept it prepared ever since the tension in my house had started escalating. When we arrived, she took one look at my face and immediately went into nurse mode. "Tyler, sweetie," she said cheerfully, "I've got some hot chocolate and your favorite cartoons ready in the living room." Once Tyler was settled, I showed her the recorded live stream. Sarah, who had witnessed countless family dramas in her nursing career, watched in silent horror. "Oh, Marie," she breathed, pulling me into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry. But you did the right thing. You're protecting yourself and Tyler, just like we always advise our patients to do." David's messages started flooding my phone within an hour. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? What's going on? Tyler needs to be home for school tomorrow." I sent one brief, professional response. "Tyler and I are safe at Sarah's. I need time to think. He'll attend school virtually tomorrow." Then I silenced my phone, focusing instead on helping Tyler adjust to our temporary new home. The confrontation. After 2 days of careful preparation, including consultations with a family lawyer Sarah recommended, I knew it was time to face David. Walking back into our house felt like entering a hostile patient's room. You know it's necessary, but your guard stays up. I found David in his usual spot on the couch, surrounded by empty energy drink cans, and his laptop displaying yet another revolutionary app design. The moment he saw me, he jumped up, ready to launch into what I'm sure would be another grand explanation. But I cut him off immediately, my voice steady with the same professional calm I used to deliver difficult news to patients' families. "I saw Emma's live stream," I stated, watching his face drain of color. "I know about the fake pregnancy scheme. I know you were both planning to manipulate me for my inheritance." "Marie, wait," he stuttered, his confident facade cracking. "It wasn't what it looked like. Emma was just joking around with her friends. You know how kids are with social media." I held up my hand, stopping his excuses. "I've recorded everything. The live stream, our conversations, the bank statements showing how you've been living off my inheritance. I've documented it all." The confrontation continues. When denial didn't work, David's demeanor changed completely. His face contorted with anger and desperation, an expression I'd seen too many times on family members when they realized their manipulation wasn't working anymore. "You can't just leave," he shouted, pacing the living room. "Do you have any idea how hard it will be for me to maintain this lifestyle? I haven't found a new tech position yet. Emma needs your support for her future." I stood my ground, drawing on years of experience handling aggressive situations at Silver Oak. "Your financial struggles are no longer my concern," I stated firmly. "I've already spoken with a lawyer. Any further communication will be through legal channels." His eyes narrowed dangerously. "You think you can just walk away? I'll fight you for custody. I'll tell everyone what a horrible stepmother you've been to Emma." "I've documented everything," I replied calmly, though my heart was racing. Every conversation, every bank statement, Emma's live stream admitting to the fake pregnancy scheme. I have more than enough evidence to protect myself and Tyler. And if you become any more aggressive, my next call will be to the police. The aftermath. The divorce proceedings moved forward with the same methodical precision I applied to my patient care protocols. My detailed documentation proved invaluable. Just as thorough charting protects nurses, careful record keeping protected me in court. Emma made several attempts to contact me through various social media accounts. You're abandoning me when I need you most. After everything we've been through as a family. You have so much money. Why can't you help me start my career? Each message displayed the same entitled attitude I'd seen in families fighting over their elderly parents' resources. I blocked her accounts one by one, applying the same firm boundaries I'd learned to set with difficult patients' families. Epilogue 7 months later. The divorce is now finalized. Years of handling complex family situations at Silver Oak taught me the importance of maintaining clear records, which proved crucial during the proceedings. I have primary custody of Tyler, with David's visits being supervised, a precaution my lawyer recommended given his history of manipulation. The inheritance remains secure, earmarked for Tyler's education and our future. More importantly, I've maintained the professional boundaries and personal integrity that my grandmother taught me to value. The same principles I apply every day in my nursing career. My grandmother used to say that caring for others shouldn't mean sacrificing yourself. It's a lesson I share with my patients at Silver Oak, and one I finally learned to apply to my own life. Sometimes the most caring thing you can do, for yourself and others, is to walk away and start fresh.